Hey, everyone. Welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We've got a really awesome guest today. He is in UX design and design strategy, and he's especially good at design thinking and building experiences. He draws this from his user-centered design experience and entrepreneurial mindset to innovate and test ideas. Please join me in welcoming Eric Lee. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You ready for 20 questions?
Yeah, for sure. Throw at me.
Okay, here we go. Number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
I'm currently a UX designer in the financial tech center here based in Vancouver, Canada. Uh, the company is called Central One. We basically provide banking solutions to about 300, 400 credit unions here in Canada. Outside of that, I also mentor at ADP List. I've taught and will be continue teaching fundamentals of UX design with EmergeX or any other platform I find. I also host in-person events for a community here, UX community here based in Vancouver, called Vancouver Design Check-In. So that's all about me.
Awesome. Just a note for our audience, Eric and I met last week when I was running a workshop here in Vancouver, Canada. And yeah, really glad we met. Number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
So a lot of UX designers are people in general that in my field that I find there's like difference is I drive a lot from my entrepreneurial mindset into why are things the way it is, rather than how is it right now or how it should be. I more focus on why is it the way it is right now, and why do people think it should be in certain way? Do they really understand the why, or do they have their own opinion on things, and why do they have those? So yeah, I always go back to their empathize and put myself in their shoes to understand their point of view and look into the world through that lens.
Awesome. That's great. Eric and I were chatting at the event at the workshop, and I discovered that he has a background connected to New Delhi. We've got an awesome guest really early on from New Delhi, Natasha Obradovic. She was there when I was there 10 years ago teaching.
Wow.
So yeah, really nice connections like that.
Yeah, New Delhi is like that's where I grew up, born and raised, spent my first 18 years. So it's amazing to hear that y'all were influenced in the education field there back in my hometown.
That's awesome. Number three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Uh, why do I do what I do? It's good, very interesting question. I think it's mostly I love solving problems. I love problem solving, like puzzles. I love creating stories and building new stories. So ever since growing up, I've always been a problem solver. My dad used to come up with certain problems and ask me how to solve those, or what angle would I take to solve them in the best possible way, or in the more empathetic point of view. I Over the years I have gained many insights, many skills just to build up upon my problem solving. So fundamentally, even before I was a UX designer, in my entrepreneurship program that was part in SFU, I was more focused on problem solving in a bigger scale, meeting other people, going in the field, talking to users or like target audience users, and interview them, figure out their problems, and just like trying to solve their problem was really fun and exciting to me. And once I got into UX, I realized that UX was all about problem solving as well. and much more. So I was like, I found my perfect passion. This is where I'm supposed to be. And hence why I am where I am right now, just because I love solving problems.
Perfect. Some people struggle with number 4 these days, but the question is, what does your future look like?
Uh, I can see why people might struggle with this question. I have plans. I have a lot of plans how my future could look like, that could influence how my future could look like. But I'm not fully sure about it since it's like future is so long, anything could happen at that time. Like for example, a few years back, nobody knew pandemic is gonna happen, and it's gonna happen in this impactful way, to a point it has changed a lot of people's lives. It has changed my life, since I completely developed my career during the pandemic. So in future, to me, I'm hopeful. I plan to build my brand, build myself in a way I can put myself out there where people can reach out to me, and to reach out to me to help them with their problems, or build something that build an experience or build a product or anything to help the people that they are targeting better and in a more easier, quicker manner. So all that will eventually lead to me doing more public speaking, putting myself more in the limelight, and yeah, eventually start a family and settle down eventually. Very, very rough outline of the future, but yeah, that's my most immediate aim, is just focusing on my personal branding.
Nice. Number 5, we touched on this a bit, but the question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Right. Uh, I was, I'll have to go back to, yeah, when my hometown back in India. As a Chinese born and raised in India, the first 18 years of my life, I found I was very limited. My space was my school that I spent 14 years, all the way from kindergarten to grade 12. My views and my ideas were just within that particular space. But every time I went out of my school, then I have all these other people, the civilians, the pedestrians, all constantly looking at me like I'm sort of tourist. So I've always felt alienated in that space, which put pressure on me, which definitely constrained me on the things and my ideas of the world. But once I came to Canada, that where everybody's not looking at me anymore, not staring at me anymore, because I look like just another person here in Vancouver, Canada. It felt different. It felt I'm able to express myself the way I want to. I don't have to set constraints or limit like I used to back at home. So that really helped me break out of my shell, find out my own version, the original me with no limits, and able to just spread my wings and move forward confidently. So space to me is really important in that aspect. But
Nice.
yeah, now expanding to that from Canada, now my dad has always been, don't just think about where you are right now, don't just think about Canada. With what you're doing, you could influence the whole world. So trying to still work on that part. But yes.
Nice. And kind of connected is number 6. If you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
If I wanted to give advice to my former younger self, it would probably be, don't be afraid of failure or failing. Especially like in schools, we're taught that there's only one answer, one solution to the question. And if you get it wrong, then you basically fail and you don't get that grade. And then you are looked down upon compared to the rest of other people. You are looked down as like somebody who's not smart versus somebody who got it right the first time is smart, or like taught or remembered to learn how to do it, is smarter than you. That was very ingrained, especially in the Asian society that I grew up in. But now as I am more into applying things in real life outside of school, there's no just one answer or one absolute solution out there. Everybody's trying to figure out their own way, but everybody is so afraid of failure because that's just what they're taught in their school, or that's how they grew up in. So now I realize the importance of failing. Failing is just another way of a lesson and like progress. And you should look at it in a way, you fail, that's amazing. Learn from it, and what's next? So that would probably be the biggest advice to my younger self.
I like that. So let's switch gears here with number 7. What's your day in the life like?
A day in my life, it's quite messy nowadays. I'm involved with a lot of things. As I mentioned, I'm in communities, I'm teaching, I'm mentoring, and all that. Well, starting off, I guess, would be work, my day job, which will be 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 4:30. It's work. Currently, I'm working remotely, so I'm lucky to have that. I wake up, get ready, sit down, think about the task I need to do for the day, then hop into my first meeting at work, do my work job. Once I'm done at 4:30, I take a break, take a breather, get some water, hydrate, and like I try to do something more physical. Like in the summer, if it was in the summer, I would go biking, or maybe I can go like play basketball for a little bit and come back. And then at night is when I coordinate all my the events that I have mentorship sessions for UX at ADP list. They come to me for 30 minutes. I also sometimes I work on my teaching material for my future courses that I'm going to be teaching, or will be teaching at. Also, I coordinate all. I'm always on Slack communicating with my community members, since I'm part of 3 different communities and I host events for all 3 of them in person. So just like communicating, organizing, and just planning that out throughout the day. And just before I go to bed, I take a little breather, I meditate for a while before I go sleep. Yeah, that's my day in the life, Tia. Yeah.
Nice. I'm reminded of the height of my industry career working at Lenovo in Beijing and having a 9 to 5, like you said, and then coming home. And that was when the real work started. That's when I got everything done, was once the day was over. Number 8 is lifelong learning is a popular topic these days. How do you stay up to date?
Lifelong learning, staying up to date. I don't watch the news. I don't believe in watching news every morning, or just have the TV open with the news channels going through various different news that they think might be relevant for me. What I usually do is I keep myself updated through my communities that I join. Like I'm part of many communities. They have a lot of materials that they post online, and they share articles that seem very interesting to me. And if I do, I check it out, read it out, and see if I understand, or if I can like explain it to somebody else or a friend of mine in this after reading that article. That really helps initially. Because, and also because I'm like looking all these through these articles, Google recommends me certain similar articles on my phone or on my computer or on my news feed on my social media um, that I'm shared with. They just use that algorithm, and then a lot of them seem very interesting. That's how I mainly stay updated with today's news and in the world. But otherwise, I feel you can, even if you stay updated with the world, um, it's about how you take in what you do with that news is probably more important.
Nice, well said. We're just about halfway. Number 9, what tools do you use? Are you entirely digital?
Give me 1 second. Like, give me 5 seconds. Okay, yeah, I'm back. Yes, all my tools are digital. They're all design based. Like I mostly use the tool called Figma. It's a great web application that is basically my bread and butter in the UX field. Everything else, everything else is just a mode of communication, like Teams or Slack or other forms, or like just work project management tools like Jira. They're all they all come together from work, so I really don't have an option with them. But yeah, my primary tool of choice is just Figma.
Nice. And actually halfway, number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Work-life balance. So the job I had before my current job was I was working in a startup. The work was great. I really enjoyed it. It's just it was I was my own boss at the time because we didn't have a design lead at the time. So I was just working, collaborating with the stakeholders, the CEO, CTO, just with the product management. But managing people and all that felt like like more than just a full-time job. And it was definitely affecting my life outside. It was really difficult for me to find that work-life balance. And at times I felt I got really burnt out pretty much a lot of times. So I had to take vacation days of few times a week just to make myself back and ready at 100%. But once I switched my job to my current job, things became more, um, things became better. I found more of a balance in like working for yes, in startup I was working for somebody else, but then I was also my own boss and I was giving my everything. I really cared about the product. I really cared about the users. So I was constantly thinking of ways. But in my current job, I don't have to think that hard anymore, or more like I set boundaries for myself before going in. Like there's an extent I can go for my users for the product, but there's also cases where I do not where I set limits for myself. Like this is not what I was hired to do, and this is enough and beyond that I can. This is the beyond aspect that I'm going to contribute for the company. So just setting limits for me during that 9 to 5 really helped me a lot. Even though the work, it may not be fulfilling in terms of my passion. I mean, it's a job that I do and I apply the skills that I'm good at, and I like that's fine and all, but it doesn't really triggers my passion. So I try to keep work as work, and when my work is done, that's when I go look at my communities, prepare my materials for my teaching in UX, and that to me is more fulfilling. So that's how I try to keep balance. Like in the daytime job, I just work. At nighttime, I just do the things I like. And it's a 50-50. So that's how also remote work really helped me find that balance even better. So yeah, that's probably how I find my work-life balance.
Great. Number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
So I did start when I came to Canada. I came for my higher education. I got into college, and I was initially planning to be a developer, a programmer. I was studying computer science. I have an associate's degree in computer science from the college. So I was mostly focused on becoming a developer, and eventually I did find myself better at the front end of things. So my initial plan was to be a website design developer before I found UX. And yeah, I'm glad I found UX because because I'm solving more problems in the field of UX in compared to as a web developer, where I'm just getting the solutions from higher up and just like implementing.
Great. And number 12, what would you not like to do with your career?
Uh, Not like to do with my career. That's a very interesting question. I don't have anything specific to not to do in the career. It's more like in my current career right now, in my current phase in life, I would love to do everything, anything and everything for my career just to have that exposure
Mm.
so that later on I can narrow down and find my passion, find something I'm really good at or could be good at that can find more meaning to do while I'm doing it. Something wrong, then I would probably say stop constraining yourself to a space, referring to the previous questions. Uh, do not basically do not feel limited by your imaginary shackles. Always always look at the bigger picture and execute beyond them. That
Awesome.
would, yes.
Yeah. Okay. 13, what's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Word, quote, or sentence. There were a couple in design. It's not coming to my head, but there's this very simple quote from the movie and from the animated movie Kung Fu Panda that really stuck to me ever since I was young. Like, don't focus on the past or the future. Focus on the present, your current state. And that's why it's called a present. I think I quoted it differently, but yes, it's basically the same meaning. And that to me really stood out to me ever since.
Great. And 15, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you choose?
Mm, empathetic, for sure. Um, I was raised as a very empathetic, and I was surrounded by my parents who were very empathetic and always taught me how to look through other people's lenses rather than your own.
Great.
Reason being, uh, reason being, like when I was growing up, people reacted to me in ways I couldn't understand. They always made fun of me because I looked different, or everything I do was different. They find it odd and make fun of me. So I could just have just not looked at the lens and just absorbed all the negativity and be sad and feel pressured. But no, I learned to look at it from their point of view. Why are they making fun of me? How did they grow up? Why is this different to them? That's why what goes on through their mind to a point where they're making fun of me. That knowing the reasons behind those really helped me really helped me get a clear perspective. Yeah, made me feel better from all that negativity.
Nice. 16, what keeps you up at night?
Uh yeah, this is probably opposite to what I mentioned in the quote part, but I keep thinking about the future. I keep planning, and when I see an opportunity that is potentially really exciting to me, my brain just forgets about the current right now, and we think about all the possibilities or ways I could perform or go along with that opportunity, and just really see the potential of it. That to me, when that happens, I see myself not sleeping for an hour or two.
Nice. 17, what's a dream you're chasing?
The dream I'm chasing is probably just freedom and independence to do anything I want when I want it. It's probably very immature since I'm still in the early stages of my career. But basically, the dream I'm chasing is be able to impact in my career in a way I can do the same for others or anybody in any industry, especially, and then eventually helping nonprofit organizations, NGOs who are trying to impact the world for good, and help them find solutions that and teach them processes that will help them solve the solutions that they were not exposed to in compared to the competitive tech world.
Great. And final stretch, number 18, what inspires you?
My biggest form of inspiration ever since I was growing up was my father. He's been always a pillar of support. He has always, even though he wasn't like, every year he would spend less than 6 months in the country, in the city that I was, because he was working abroad most of the time. He made sure that he was there for me when I needed him. And he has always been a he had a very strong image about himself where he was almost never wrong, but the times where he didn't know an answer to a question, he would always guide me to finding it. How do I go and finding it? And now, as even after he retired, he is still working and doing the things he loved, because at the job he was using it as a means to support his family. But now that his children can support themselves, he can finally go ahead and do everything he wants and start multiple businesses at once, which is amazing. I cannot see a person being able to start 4 or 5 businesses all at once in a very short period of time. So yeah, he's the biggest form of inspiration to me.
It's a good answer. Number 19, any advice you'd like to share?
Right. Don't be limited by the imaginary limits you have set for yourself. Always try to go beyond them, break those limits, and find your next limit, and then break beyond that. Because these limits, we are only limited by our own imaginary thoughts and ideas. We think it's set by others, but no, it's set by yourself. So, and
Great.
don't failure, basically. Yes.
Great. And the one we're all excited for, of course, is number 20. How can our listeners keep tabs on you? How can we follow you? What should we check out?
Right. You could follow me you can feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. My full name is Eric Joseph Lee, or Eric the Design Guy. That's how I'm trying to market myself. Yeah, that's mainly. I also mentor at ADP List, so you could try to find me there. And hopefully, I'm currently working on YouTube channels and Instagram based on teaching UX and basically solving problems through UX processes. Those will probably up in the future under Eric the Design Guy. But yeah, that's probably all.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Eric. I'm so glad that, in part, I'm so glad that I give those workshops because I get to connect with people like you, and then find out that we have overlap, like New Delhi and of course UX and how we fell into it. And then, something magical happens and we reconnect in this way. So thank you so much.
Yes, it's my pleasure. It's definitely beautiful how people connect and just happen to be in each other's life. Yeah, thanks for having me.